make a quick video just describing the basics of the quadrant model so you can understand it. So basically, the tetragrammaton is four-letter name of God. Tetra means four, grammaton, four letters. The four letters take a 3+1 pattern because the final letter H is silent. So the Y kind of represents creation, according to Kabbalists. Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. The Y represents creation. The H represents uh, sustaining, homeostasis, so maintenance. So once something's created, now there's the maintenance. The W represents kind of action, building upon the maintenance. So it's also destructive. So it's destroying the maintenance, the second square. So it's breaking out of that homeostasis. And then the fourth part is the transcendent H, which is silent. That's different than the previous three. So that's the way the Kabbalists looked at the tetragrammaton. So the Bible says that the tetragrammaton is everything. That existence is the tetragrammaton. They say that everything. God is so. But when people would try to describe what that means, they would say, oh, yeah, energy, maybe God's energy, that's what everything is. No. What it's saying is everything is that 3+1 pattern. That 3+1 pattern is the basis of existence. And that's what I discovered with the quadrant model. So just a couple more examples would be, we talked about the Om. The A represents Brahma, creation. The U represents Vishnu, sustaining. The M represents destruction and Shiva. And then according to Mandukya Upanishad, the fourth part is a silence, which is said to surround the previous three or engulf them. Again, that transcendent fourth aspect. So the Mandukya Upanishad says that the Om is a fourfold sound. A lot of people think it's threefold because they only know about the A, the U, and the M. But they don't know about that transcendent fourth aspect. And that's very essential to the nature of existence, this interplay between the number 3 and number 4. So Carl Jung talked about the quaternity idea, where he would say that Christianity was, they believe in the Trinity, but they're lacking the fourth aspect, making it quaternity. So he would say that the Catholic Church kind of did create a quaternity because he argued that they worship the Mother Mary as well. So there's that transcendent fourth aspect, which is added to the Trinity, creating a quaternity. Carl Jung said that any Trinity is an incomplete quaternity. Every Trinity wants to become a quaternity because wholeness is created once the 3 moves to 4. So there's a popular, famous physicist named Wolfgang Pauli. He kind of spearheaded quantum mechanics, and he described that that his greatest achievement was moving from the 3 to the 4. So the way that he did that was there were originally 3 quantum numbers, and then he added the 4th quantum number, and he said that that was his greatest accomplishment. And he dialogued with Jung, and Jung said that Wolfgang Pauli was under a kind of psychosis, and that he was stuck on the number 3, which Jung said was a psychosis because, again, Jung said that every trinity is a deficient quaternity. So, but then Pauli added that 4th transcendent quantum number, and that completed the whole enterprise so that quantum mechanics could be established. Okay, so I'll give a few more examples of this 3-4 interplay. So the Hindus, they have 3 doshas. A lot of people know about the 3 doshas, which are the 3 humors. But according to one Hindu text, there's a 4th dosha, which they say is blood. So even in the Western medicine, originally there was the idea, the Western medicine was based around the idea of the 4 humors, where there was the black bile, or originally it was yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. Those were the 4 humors. So there's melancholic people, phlegmatic people, and choleric people. But then a fourth um, a fourth humor was added. So Thales added this fourth humor. He said that black bile was the fourth humor. So originally there were three humors, and then Thales came around and he said, the Egyptians, they believe in four humors. So originally there were three, and then Thales added this fourth humor. And the four temperaments, phlegmatic, melancholic, sanguine, and choleric, are based around the different variations of quantities of these four humors within the body. So somebody who's phlegmatic would have a higher amount of phlegm, okay? So the four humors and then the four temperaments. And again, there's originally three humors and then they add the fourth. So another example would be if you just look at the four elements. So Aristotle in the physics, he talks about Empedocles' analysis of the four elements. So Empedocles was an old Greek, ancient Greek philosopher, and he described that there were four elements out of which everything was created. There was the air, which he related to Zeus, these four primordial gods. The water, which is related to Poseidon, Hera, Earth. So Hera is a goddess, is related to Earth. And then there was the fire, which was associated with Hades. Now, Aristotle describes that that Empedocles saw the fourth element, fire, as opposed to the previous three, as separate, as different. So Aristotle explicitly mentions this, that the way that Empedocles saw these first three elements, he saw them as a kind of a trinity, as one. But the fire was different. It was separate. Again, we're seeing that 3 plus 1 to 3, and the fourth, which is different. So it's interesting that Aristotle, later in the physics, he agrees with Empedocles, says there's only four elements. Later in the physics, he says, okay, there's actually a fifth. It's ether. And he says that the ether, though, is ultra transcendent. He says that whereas the first four, air, water, earth, and fire, associate with each other, they affiliate with each other, ether is divine. It's in the heavens. It doesn't even collaborate. It doesn't even interact with the first four elements. It is so transcendent, it doesn't even have contact with them. It's divine. So the fifth is always divine. The fourth is transcendent. The fifth is ultra transcendent, divine. I'm going to get to the idea that the first square is always kind of mental creation. The second square is always homeostasis. And it's kind of an intermediate between the ethereal first square, the non-physical first square, and the third square, which is always physical. So if you think about it in terms of the elements, the first square is air, which is ethereal. It's amorphous. The second square is water, which is an intermediate between the non-physical first square and the physical third square, which is earth. So we have an intermediate, water, and then we have earth. Now we're in the physical level. And then the fourth square is plasma, which is different. The fourth is always different. It's kind of contains the previous three, but it also has a different quality to it. So, Plato, he described when that everything in existence was built around the four elements. But he related the four elements to four platonic solids. There's actually a fifth platonic solid, but again, we're going to see that same pattern. So he didn't even mention the fifth. Again, the fifth is always questionable. The fifth doesn't even seem to exist. It's questionable. It's so transcendent that it's debatable if it even exists. That's the nature of the fifth. So the way that Aristotle mentioned this, or the way that Plato described it in the Timaeus, is he said that according to Platonic solids, these are perfect solids. The tetrahedron was related to fire. The octahedron was related to air. The cube was related to earth. And the icosahedron was related to water. So he said that those four shapes and four elements created all of existence. So everything, again, is built around this fourfold, with the fourth being different. That's the quadrant pattern. So the tetrachus, the Greeks, they worship the tetrachus, or at least the Pythagoreans. So Pythagoras, he worshipped the tetrachus. In order to become a Pythagorean, you had to swear an oath to the tetrachus. So a lot of philosophers think that the Tetrachys, according to Pythagoras, was the Tetragrammaton. That Pythagoras knew about the Tetragrammaton and that he linked the Tetragrammaton to the Tetrachys. Remember, the Tetragrammaton is the name of God for the Israelites. So the Tetrachys is one dot on the top. It's a triangle with one dot at the top, two dots under it, three dots below that, and then four dots below that, making 10 dots at all, making a decad. But it's a decad of 4 rows, so it's a tetrad. So this was what Pythagoras saw as God, as the ultimate God. So there's this ancient philosopher called Heracles who analyzed Pythagoras' works, and he said, yes, Pythagoras believed that the number 4 was God, that the quaternion was God, and Heracles even agrees with them. He says, yes, that the number 4, that the quaternion is God. He agrees with that. Now that those 10 dots in the Tetrachys is related to the 10 dots or the 10 Sephirot in the Tree of Life, which I showed before actually is a quadrant model in and of itself, the Tree of Life that the Kabbalists use. So I can go more into details on that later. But I have a lot of diagrams related to that. Now, there was a Jewish mystic named Abulafia who said that the cross was related to the number 4. That the cross in the Tetragrammaton, I'm going to finish it with one video, that the cross and the Tetragrammaton were the same thing. So, or at least they were very linked. So the Y on the cross was, there's 4 branches on the cross. And there was one branch is the Y and then the H, and the other branch was the W and the H. So you have the 4 letters with the 4 branches of the cross. Now, I can demonstrate that this pattern, this 3 + 1 pattern, is actually the fundamental blueprint of existence. So I'll just give a few examples. So there was this guy, originally people believed that there were 3 domains of life: the archaea, the bacteria, and the eukaryotes. The archaea are the weird ones. The bacteria would be the homeostasis ones, are breaking down dead matter. The eukaryotes would be the doers, the third square, which is physical. Then recently there's been the proposition, and the evidence indicates that there's a 4th domain of life, the virus. So the virus was always a questionable, like it didn't seem to be a domain of life because a virus needs to live within a host cell. It needs to live within a bacteria or a eukaryote or archaea to survive. So again, it kind of is separate, but it contains the previous 3. It's within the previous 3. It's a holistic model where each square builds upon the previous square, but also has elements of the previous squares. So the virus needs to be within the previous 3 to survive. But now biologists are saying, and they said for a while, that the virus is a domain of life, a separate domain of life, the transcendent 4th. So another example would be, originally they thought that scientists believed that there were 3 kingdoms of life, of eukaryotes. So eukaryotes, remember, are one of the domains of life. So originally they said there's 3 kingdoms. It's the plants, the animals, and the fungi. So again, the plant would be the first square. The fungi would be the ones that break down the matter. That's the second square. And then there's the animals, which are the doers. But then there's this guy named John Hogg who said there's actually a 4th domain of life. It's the protists, but I think he called them the slime molds. But then, so Whitaker, the most popular model that's used today, is that there's 4 domains of eukaryotes, or 4 kingdoms of eukaryotes. It's the plants, the animals, the fungi, and the protists. And what's interesting about the protists is there's animal-like protists, plant-like protists, and there's fungi-like protists. That's the way that they describe them. Fungi-like, plant-like. So again, it's that separate, but it contains the previous 3. So I can go on, and I can give examples of this 3-4 dynamic and how it actually is the basis of existence. I can talk about there's 4 rows of hair cells. 3 there's in the ear, and the 4th row is different. There's 4 paranasal sinuses. There's 4 types of teeth. There's 4 lobes of the brain. The 4th part is different. There's the blood is made up of hemoglobin, which has 4 units, 2 A subunits and 2 B subunits, making a quadrant formation. Most of your blood plasma is made up of G antibodies, which are tetrameric. They have 4 units. Your teeth itself have 4 parts to them. four elements make up the teeth. And I can go on and on and on, and I can give you examples. That's just biology. There's four types of tissues. There's the nervous, the muscle, the connective, and the epithelial tissue. And then this is just biology. Now, then I move. Okay, I'll just give one more example. There were originally thought to be three macromolecules. They thought that there was the proteins, carbohydrates, and the fats. But then later they added the fourth, the nucleic acids. The DNA has four nucleobases, A, C, G, and T. The fourth one's different because in RNA, it's A, C, G, and U, urine. So adenine, cytosine, guanine, and urine is in RNA, but in DNA, it's adenosine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. So that fourth one that's different. It's always that same pattern that I think the way that Jung called it the recalcitrant fourth when he looked at the mythology. So in mythologies throughout the world, I'll give an example with the Hawaiians. They have four gods, and the fourth one is kind of a trickster. He's kind of different. So Jung suggested that perhaps in the Christian tradition, the fourth part, he said that it could be the Mother Mary, but it also could be Satan. This is what Jung thought, that Satan could be the fourth aspect of the quaternity. So that pattern is seen within the Hawaiian mythology, but it's in the Sumerian mythology where they had originally three main gods, but then they added a fourth, which was different. And this pattern is always seen. It's constant. It's so pervasive. It's not a coincidence. That's why I say that the cross, the quadrant, the fourfold is the form of being. It's the form of existence. It is what reality is built around. This is the code of reality, the quadrant pattern, the quadrant model. And I have so much evidence. And I'm not just talking about biology. I'm not talking about just physics. I'm not talking about just science. I'm talking about in cinema. I'm talking about in paintings. I give one famous example would be Manet's The Luncheon. There's three figures in the front, and then there's that fourth figure behind them, that transcendent fourth. And this pattern is just it's so constant. It's ubiquitous. So I say that the form of being is the cross. Now, Plato in the Timaeus, he even says that the soul of existence was created through a cosmic chiasm. A chiasm is a cross. And he describes that there were two sets of four numbers that created reality, what they call a two tetrachus. And he uses that in what's called Plato's lambda. So there's one number at the top, which is repeated, and then there's three numbers this way and three numbers this way, making a V, but two sets of four numbers. It's kind of difficult to explain. I'd have to draw it out for you and show you what the actual numbers are. But just there's two sets of four numbers. Now, even the Gnostics, they said that at the beginning of existence there were two tetrads, out of which all reality was created. That's again two sets of four. The Hare Krishna say that in the beginning of existence there were two quadruple expansions of Krishna, two sets of four expansions of Krishna. Again, it's that dominance of the number four and the quadrant pattern. So this really is a theory of everything. It's I know it could be difficult for a lot of people to believe, but it's just the way it is. Yeah, it's difficult to believe. It's kind of amazing. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal that's the fact. So, okay.